Hello, my name is Oliver Bergeron, and this is my semi-finalist nomination game presentation for my game in an orderly fashion. The goal of this assignment was to make a game based around a memory, and for me, I wanted to talk about one very close to my upbringing. I'm biracial, I'm half white, half Mexican, and I spent a lot of my childhood crossing the border, both on foot and by car, to go between San Diego and Tijuana. And the goal of this game was to try and portray that. The goal for me with this assignment was to try and portray that experience, but to do it in a way that tied in kind of wider concepts of both CMPM 80K, but also similar intersectional ideas more deeply found within the reading and adjacent classes like I've been taking, such as Film ADV. I wanted to portray this experience, this personal memory, from an intersectional lens. I wanted to portray it with the respect that I felt like it deserved. Specifically, how different that experience is if you're not of a certain appearance, a certain ethnic background, a certain manner of speaking, a certain kind of neurotypicality, specifically, your anxiety as you go through a pretty intense security checkpoint. I wanted to take this experience and really give it a sense of authenticity, but also try and derive from tension, its possibilities in the sense of, what happens when you say the wrong thing. And to expand upon that, by the wrong thing, I mean not necessarily morally wrong, but what might be constitutionally wrong in the legal sense, or what might be wrong, in the context of who you're talking to. A lot of this experience was derived from the fact that when I would cross the border with my mother, who's a permanent resident and not a citizen, there was a lot of paperwork mishap, such that it was very likely that she would not be let into the country. So what we would do is try and maneuver the line at the border such that we wouldn't get a white police officer. And I wanted to try and not portray that experience specifically, but to portray that level of tension and that level of kind of creeping, looming racial fear and anxiety in this place. Now, I've prepared 2 speed runs of the game itself. One feature about this game that I was really proud of was the idea of randomization, such that you get a different experience almost every time that you play. What you'll find, as shown in the intro, is that your player identity and the identities of people around you are randomized, and the idea being that every playthrough you go through, what's normally a pretty logistically linear process of going across the border, turns into this kind of meandering journey and troubling, tense experience as you navigate the legal system and the interactions with law enforcement and border officials. A lot of this was inspired by Papers, Please and the current administration to try and capture this reverse experience of crossing a border. I wanted to try and capture a certain vulnerability. I wanted to capture a certain sense of pride and loss of pride from going through a very invasive process, depending on what your playthrough is. And I wanted to also capture, for those who are lucky enough to not have to deal with the significant challenges some people might have to in this situation, I wanted to capture what it's like for someone of privilege to be able to go through this border with no difficulty whatsoever, and portray the contrast of difficulty between those 2 kinds of experiences as demonstrated in the following 2 playthroughs. I've basically put the TLDR of what the player characters regarding their appearance and their mental health, and contrasted 2 different playthroughs such that you really understand this experience. As you can tell, it's sort of what you expected regarding the outcome. Now, I didn't make it this very binary, like if you're dark or light skin, that corresponds to whether or not you pass, or whether it's the way that you speak or anything like that. But I wanted to do a very bird's eye portrayal of how this process is, where everyone around you is kind of tallying your suspicion in a way. And I wanted to create that tension and that paranoia. And if you get a chance to play the game, you'll definitely experience how different your playthrough is depending on sort of how you speak and how you back yourself up. And also when you decide to take a loss and take a risk.